everybody, and welcome to Take and Make Crafts Groundhog Day edition from the Rockville Center Library. I'm Miss Liz, and our simple craft this week will be a nice little groundhog puppet. Everything in your bag, you'll have everything in your bag that you need. His little ears, his face, and you get to put your hand inside and make him pop up. And we always hope that it's going to be an early spring. So you'll get your bag. Inside, we'll have things to cut out. There's his face, it's kind of like an upside down heart. And whiskers that you can cut to whatever shape you like. I made mine like two little V's on the side and I glued them on. You can cut out your eyes and nose and teeth and put them right on his face, just like I did. And even two little ears that you can cut out. And I put them right on the corners. We got a little bent. So I put the ears on the corners, I put the face on the flap. So you use your bag that you bring your craft home in actually becomes your groundhog puppet. And you glue your face right here and the ears behind on the corners, and then your face and your whiskers, of course. Then you put your hand in and it becomes a puppet. And that's our puppet for Groundhog Day. Wishing everyone an early spring. See you next week. Bye now. Hi everybody, welcome to Take and Make Crafts at the Rockville Center Library. I'm Miss Liz, and today we'll be doing books about groundhogs because it's almost Groundhog's Day. This book is called Groundhog Stays Up Late by Margery, Cuyler. See these beautiful end papers? Groundhog Stays Up Late. Groundhog was not the kind of groundhog who liked to hibernate. To him, making a winter burrow was boring. Gathering and storing food was boring. And most of all, sleeping all winter long was boring. Instead of preparing for winter, he liked to play hide and seek with the rabbits, possum with the opossums, and tag with the bumblebees. Why do you even bother to hibernate, chattered Squirrel. You're never ready when winter comes. You should be looking for nuts and seeds right now. I don't think I'll hibernate this year, said Groundhog. But you have to, said Badger. How else will you wake up on February 2nd and look at your shadow so we'll know when spring is coming? I don't need to hibernate to do that, said Groundhog. Bear shook his shaggy head. Well, don't expect us to give you shelter when it snows. Or food when you get hungry, said Squirrel. Or warmth when you get cold, said Badger. Finally, winter came. Groundhog's friends curled up in their homes for their long winter naps. But not Groundhog. He stayed outside. Soon it began to snow. Wow, snow, yelled Groundhog. Time to play. Hare ran by. Want to make a snowman, asked Groundhog. No, silly, said Hare. I'm racing to my woodpile until the storm's over. Weasel ran by. Want to have a snowball fight, asked Groundhog. Forget it, said Weasel. I'm scampering to my hole where it's warm. Fox ran by. Want to build a snow fort, asked Groundhog. Not now, said Fox. I'm running to my den to get dry. What a bunch of stick in the mud, said Groundhog. As the weeks passed, Groundhog built a snowman, threw snowballs at the trees, and made a snow fort. But Groundhog was getting very hungry and very thin, which was making him very cold. And most of all, he was getting very lonely. So one day, just before Christmas, he padded over to Badger's burrow. May I come in, he called. Badger opened one eye. No, I'm too busy sleeping. Groundhog scurried to Squirrel's hole. Hello, Squirrel, he said. How about sharing a few nuts? Squirrel twitched his tail. Not now, he said. I'm taking a nap. Come back in the spring. Groundhog finally burrowed through the snow to Bear's cave. Wake up, Bear. It's me, Groundhog, he called. Bear turned over and wiggled one ear. Go away, he growled. I warned you not to bother me. Poor Groundhog, so hungry, so cold, so lonely. All night long he stayed awake, But that night, as he shivered and shook, he began to get an idea that would put food in his belly and give him friends to play with. A few days later, the sun came out and the snow started to melt. Groundhog climbed to the top of Hollow Hill and pointed his nose to the sky. He opened his mouth and yelled, "Spring's come early, let's celebrate." The animals poked their heads out of their dens. They wriggled out of their burrows. They crawled out of their holes. How wonderful to have an early spring. Even though it was cold and there was patches of snow on the ground, spring was on its way. They gathered the food as they had stored in the fall and carried it outside. Groundhog was waiting for them. "Happy spring," he lied. "I didn't see my shadow, so spring is coming early. Let's eat." "Hooray," yelled Bear. "Hooray," shouted the other animals. They laid all of their food on a big stump. Groundhog dove into the dried berries and nuts and seeds. Soon everyone was eating and celebrating. That is, until something unexpected started to happen. A snowflake fell from the sky, and then another, and another. Soon the snow was swirling around them like tiny stars. "I thought spring was coming early this year," complained Squirrel. "I'm getting very cold and very tired all of a sudden," moaned Bear. "I need to take a nap," said Badger. Squirrel skittered back to his hole and looked at his calendar. It was only January 2nd. "Groundhog played a trick on us," he yelled. "It's not February 2nd. Groundhog Day is a whole month away." "What a nasty trick," cried the animals. "Groundhog should be punished." But Groundhog didn't hear them. He was so sleepy after his big meal that he crawled into his burrow and had fallen fast asleep. And he slept right up until February 2nd, when his eyes popped open for Groundhog Day. He stepped out into the fresh air. The snow had melted, the birds were singing, and buttercups dotted the woods with color. "It's spring," said Groundhog. But when he looked down at the ground, he saw his shadow. It looked a little strange, and it was a funny color, but it had to be his. "Nuts," he said. 6 more weeks of winter." Then he returned to his burrow and went back to sleep. That does look like a strange shadow. The other animals came out of their hiding places. "Our trick worked," said Badger. "That shadow we painted sure fooled Groundhog." While Groundhog slept through spring, his friends enjoyed the sun warming their fur and the breezes ruffling through the trees. But did Groundhog learn his lesson? No. Happy New Year. Again, he doesn't hibernate. What a silly groundhog. And that was Groundhog Stays Up Late by Margery Cuyler. And now we'll read Go to Sleep, Groundhog. There he is in his pajamas. He looks comfy. Go to Sleep, Groundhog by Judy Cox. Groundhog went to bed on Columbus Day, just like he always did. He brushed his teeth. He put on his jammies. He set his clock for February 2nd. Then he curled up in his warm, cozy bed. He closed his eyes. He tossed and turned, but he couldn't get to sleep. Finally, he got out of bed. He peered at his clock. 1/2 October. Groundhog poked his nose outside his burrow. The moon was full. "I'll just go for a little walk," he said. "Maybe that will make me sleepy." I wonder. Groundhog went outside. He saw things he'd never seen before. Raggedy scarecrows and grinny jack-o'-lanterns. Children dressed up like pirates, cowboys, and princesses. It must be Halloween. Halloween Witch flew down. "What are you doing up?" she said. "It's almost winter. You should be in bed." Witch flew Groundhog home on her broomstick. She tucked him in. She read him a ghost story. She gave him a glass of apple cider. Groundhog curled up in his warm, cozy bed. He closed his eyes. He tossed and turned, but he couldn't get to sleep. Finally, he got out of bed. He peered at his clock. 1/2 November. He poked his nose outside his burrow. The leaves were red and yellow. "I'll just go for a little walk," he said. "Maybe that will make me sleepy." Groundhog went outside. He saw things he'd never seen before. Tall yellow corn shocks and round orange pumpkins, turkeys gobbling in the barnyard. "What are you doing up, Turkey said. It's almost winter. You should be in bed, and I should be making myself scarce. Turkey took Groundhog home. He tucked him in. He read him a story about pilgrims. He gave him a slice of pumpkin pie. Groundhog curled up in his cozy bed. He closed his eyes. He tossed and he turned, but he couldn't get to sleep. Finally, he got out of bed. He peered at his clock. 1/2 December. Groundhog poked his nose outside his burrow. Stars twinkled overhead. I'll just go for a little walk, he said. Maybe that will make me sleepy. Groundhog went outside. He saw things he'd never seen before. Colored lights glowing on some houses, candles shining in windows, holly wreaths hanging on doors. He heard sleigh bells chiming in the air. Santa flew down in his sleigh. What are you doing up? Santa said. It's winter. You should be in bed. Santa took Groundhog home in his sleigh. He tucked him in. He read him a Christmas story. He gave him a glass of milk and a cookie. Groundhog curled up in his warm, cozy bed. He closed his eyes. He didn't toss and he didn't turn, and soon he fell asleep. Bring! Groundhog opened one eye. It can't be time to get up yet, he grumbled. I just got to sleep. Bring! He peered at his clock. February 2nd. Groundhog yawned and stretched. He tumbled out of his burrow. Snow glittered on the ground. The sun was out. The sky was blue. Groundhog saw his shadow. What am I doing up? There are 6 more weeks of winter coming. I should be in bed. He hurried back inside. He ate a bedtime snack. He read himself a bedtime story. Then he tucked himself into his warm, cozy bed. And he pulled up the covers, closed his eyes, and went to sleep. And that is the end of the book. And the back of the book has all cool facts about Groundhog Day. So that's really fun. And one more book about groundhogs called Gregory's Shadow by Don Freeman. Gregory's Shadow. Early one cold morning, Gregory Groundhog bundled up before going outside. He had spent the entire winter inside his cozy burrow home. Tomorrow was Groundhog Day. The farmers would want to know if Gregory and his shadow came out of their burrow together. If they did, there would be 6 more weeks of winter. But if Gregory came out alone, spring would be coming very soon. Come, Shadow, Gregory said to his friend. I can't wait until tomorrow. I'm hungry. Let's go dig up something to eat. Gregory was shy. Having a friend like Shadow made him feel brave. They did everything together. Sure, said Shadow. I'm right behind you. Gregory opened the door. It was a windy day, but the sun was shining and the ground was covered with snow. When the 2 friends reached the edge of Farmer Ferguson's garden, Gregory saw another shadow coming toward him. It was waving its arms. What could it be? Gregory was frightened. He ran back home. Wait for me, Shadow called out. But it was too late. Gregory had closed the door. He was so scared he forgot about his friend. He pulled the covers over his head and shut his eyes tight. Shadow was left outside. Shadow was alone. He was shy too, and being with Gregory made him feel brave. He looked up from the shadow with waving arms and saw Farmer Ferguson's scarecrow. Whose shadow are you? Asked the scarecrow. I belong to Gregory Groundhog's, replied Shadow, but he left me here. What should I do? I would like to help you, but I don't know how, said the scarecrow. I don't need a shadow. As you can see, I already have one. Shadow felt very sad. He leaned against a tree. Are you lost? Said the tree. Shadow told her about Gregory. I would like to help you, but I don't know how, said the tree. I don't need a shadow. As you can see, I already have one. I know where I belong, Shadow said, with Gregory Groundhog. He walked slowly through the snow. He soon grew tired. Just then he saw an old barn. That's a good place for me to rest, he said to himself. I'll be able to think more clearly after I have a nap. Shadow climbed into the dark, cozy hayloft and fell asleep. Meanwhile, Gregory Groundhog had realized Shadow was missing and he was hunting for his friend. Maybe he's under the bed, he thought, but all he saw was the straw mattress he had put there last fall. Maybe Shadow's lost, he said. He must be scared. I will go find him. Gregory spent all day searching through the falling snow. He didn't even think about how scared he was. He only thought about finding Shadow. When it began to snow harder, Gregory ran into the barn. It was very dark inside. Bang! The barn door blew shut behind him. Up in the hayloft, Shadow opened his eyes. He looked down and saw his dear old friend Gregory. Gregory looked up. He thought he saw something in the hayloft that looked like a blue ghost. Gregory was just about to dash out the barn door when he heard a voice say, "It's me. I'm your lost Shadow." "Oh, no, you're not my Shadow," Gregory said. "You're a ghost." Then he ran outside. It had stopped snowing. Shadow followed his friend into the bright moonlight. Gregory wouldn't leave him behind this time. When Gregory Groundhog returned around, he was very surprised. "Why, are you really my Shadow? I found you at last." "And I found you," said Shadow. Never was there a happier pair. They danced together far into the night. Then Gregory said, "I almost forgot. Tomorrow's Groundhog Day. The farmers will be looking for me." They made their way back home. "If they see us together, they will be unhappy. It will mean 6 more weeks of winter," Gregory told his friend. He didn't want the farmers to be unhappy, but he didn't want to be separated from his friend again. What should he do? Early that morning, the farmers and their families waited to see the groundhog. They watched from a great distance. "Here he comes now," said Farmer Ferguson. Gregory opened the door to his burrow. It was a gray, cloudy day. He sniffed the air. He saw the farmers. Then he had a very good idea. "Hide behind me, Shadow," he whispered. Shadow understood. He snuggled up behind his friend as close as he could and held on tight. He was so close no one could see him. "Hooray! The groundhog is staying outside without his shadow," the farmers cheered. "Spring will be here soon. Our hard winter is over." Ever since then, Gregory Groundhog waits until the 2nd of February to open his door. He and Shadow stay close to each other all the time, and they are always very brave. The end. Thanks for joining me for Take and Make Crafts and our Groundhog Day treat. Take care.